Hi everyone. In the UG program, BA English Language and Literature of the Calicut University in second semester, there is a co-paper that is appreciating poetry, in which there is a poem written by Alexander Pope, Essay on Man, Epistle 1, Section 2. In this lesson, we are going to analyze this Essay on Man, Epistle 1, Section 2 of Alexander Pope. Before we are moving on to the poem, analyzing the poem, we can have an idea about the background of that period where Alexander Pope lived in. Alexander Pope lived in the Neoclassical period in English. This Neoclassical period begins from 1660 to 1785, more than 100 years, in which we can subcategorize. The Restoration period starts in 1660 and up to 1700. Restoration period means that the monarchy was restored in England after Cromwell's rule or after Puritan interregnum. Then the next period is the Augustan age or the age of Pope, that is 1700 or 1745. This neoclassical period itself known as Augustan age, or age of Pope is otherwise known as Augustan age, or the zenith of Augustan period or neoclassical period is Augustan age, because the Augustan age, the neoclassical style reflected especially in the poems of Alexander Pope. And the third sub-period is the age of sensibility or age of Dr. Johnson, that starts from 1745 to 1785. This whole period, these whole three periods together known as neoclassical period. We can see that it has the features of classical writers, and it is neoclassical, new and plus. The Restoration monarchy that was restored in 1660, the Puritan interregnum ended and monarchy was restored under Charles II. Who was Charles II? Charles II was the exiled son of Charles I. Okay. After there was a civil war in England that starts in 1640. And in 1642 theatres were closed under the leadership of Oliver Cromwell, because they believed in Puritanism, the extreme belief in Christianity. And in 1649, Charles I was killed. He was beheaded in 1649. Then Charles II, his son Charles II, exiled to Paris and other parts of Europe. And this Charles II was brought back to England and he was given the British crown. That is known as Restoration period, accompanied by reopening of the theatres that were closed during the Puritan rule, closed in 1642, opened in 1660. The theatres were closed in 1642 and opened in 1660. After the monarchy was restored in 1660, together with theatres also were opened. That means that there was a lot of freedom for people for enjoying literature, drama, poetry. And also Church of England was restored as the national church, and church and state were still deeply intertwined. Church means that church and the ruling class, that is what his state means. Two political fractions were there. One is the Whigs, the liberal parties, and the other is Tories, the conservative, were formed. And the Whigs supported the Church of England and the Tories supported the Roman Catholicism under Pope. Charles II became in rule in 1660, ended in 1685. During the Puritan interregnum, Prince Charles was in exile in France and other parts of Europe. On 29th May 1660, the day he turned 30 years of age, Charles was restored to the English throne and he was given the English crown. He was very handsome, popular, cynical and unprincipled. For his luxuriant hedonistic life, he was a luxurious man, so he had a hedonistic approach in everything. So he was known as merry monarch. Charles II became the king, and he was the exiled son of Charles I, who was in France and other parts of Europe, we already discussed. And the theatres closed in 1642, reopened in 1660, and the two political parties, the Whigs and the Tories parties, emerged. The Augustan age starts in 1700 and 1745. Augustan age is part of Neoclassical age. Augustan age is otherwise known as Neoclassical age. The term Augustan applies loosely to the literature and art of the early 18th century, up to the time of Jonathan Swift, with its beginnings in the period of the Trident, that means Restoration. The Neoclassical age begins with the period from John Dryden. Okay, and a period of or Augustan age, period of literary excellence like that of the period of Augustus Caesar. Augustus Caesar was a ruler in Rome in 1st century AD, and under the rule of Augustus Caesar there were three writers, Virgil, Horace and Ovid. These three writers flourished during the period of Augustus Caesar in Roman. This period in Roman literature is known as Golden Age of Literature. English writers in 1660s onwards, English writers started imitating the classical writers such as Virgil, Horace and Ovid, and so King Augustus was not a ruler in England, because these writers in England imitated the writing style of Virgil, Horace and Ovid. So the term Augustus was given to English literature, or Augustan age. Augustus Caesar re-established stability after civil war following Julius Caesar's assassination in Rome. English writers, following the restoration of King Charles, felt themselves to be in a similar situation, in which the arts repressed under Cromwell repressed the literature in England. That example is in 1642 theatres was closed. Plays or drama were not performed in theatres. Then, so after restoring the monarchy, English people was given a lot of freedom. So literature as well flourished under the rule of Charles II. Neoclassical concerns, especially in poetry, include development of an elegant style, pursuit of precision of expression, they will say in a shortened words, which led many Augustan poets to revise their already published poems. Some Augustan writers are already published their poems and poems. Later they revised it. Dislike of colloquialism and informal diction. They never used an informal diction in their poetry. They used formal diction. They avoided colloquialism in their usage of language, and there was a decorum. They were in a stylish way of writing, and cultivation of good taste and refinement of good manner and taste. The socio-cultural background of this period: towns and cities grew significantly in size and number. Urbanization, that means urbanization. We have to look into Enlightenment, a term generally used to describe the philosophic, scientific and rational spirit, the freedom from superstition, the skepticism and faith in religious tolerance of much of 18th century Europe. That is what Enlightenment. The ancestors of this movement were René Descartes, John Locke, Earl of Shaftesbury and Newton, Sir Isaac Newton in himself, the scientist. Then Diderot, Voltaire, Rousseau, Buffon were associated with Enlightenment in the minds of English readers, as one of its great monuments. The Encyclopedia of Britannica, that is a product of this Enlightenment period, product of this distinct and important intellectual movement of sometimes described as the Scottish Enlightenment. In England, many writers and poets echo or develop the educational and political ideas of the Enlightenment. Enlightenment influenced a lot of writers in England, including literary level. Some have been seen connection between the philosophy of the Enlightenment, the growth of literary realism, and the rise of the novel. Enlightenment also influenced for the rise of the novel as well. Enlightenment and Neoclassicism. The roots of Neoclassicism lie in the Enlightenment. That is what importance here. The underlying beliefs and principles of the Enlightenment deeply influenced Neoclassical writers. One is use of reason to discover laws of nature, using the reason. Second one is desire for order in the society and democratic values. And third one is change to be brought about by intelligent debate rather than force. There had a lot of intellectual debates, and changes were brought into through these debates. Then desire to protect human liberty. Human liberty or human freedom were protected. That is the influence of Enlightenment. And the belief that all men are free and equal, and embrace of monotheistic deism, need for a free market. Hobbes, Locke, Montesquieu, Immanuel Kant, Hegel, Adam Smith, Voltaire, Rousseau, etc. Everything that belongs to these Enlightenment philosophers. The Newtonian science and Lockean philosophy, Sir Isaac Newton's science and John Locke philosophy, influenced this new class of intellectuals in France who were free thinkers in religion and radicals in politics. They promoted the systematic application of reason for what? To discover knowledge of human life. Reason to discover knowledge of human life and to improve human existence through the development of non-authoritarian social and political systems. That means they supported democratic systems. That is what he means. The profile of Alexander Pope, who was born in 1688, the period or the year in which the Glorious Revolution happened, and died in 1744. He was a son of a linen draper. Linen draper means that connected with his father was connected with in the market of clothes and textiles, linen draper. He was also, Alexander Pope, his family was a Catholics, Roman Catholics and a conservative. So he supporter of Tory party against the Whigs, and he was a Roman Catholic against the English belief system of Church of England. He was a Roman Catholic. So he and his family as well suffered a lot. And second important Augustan poet after Dryden. Pope was a Roman Catholic born in London. In the year of the Glorious Revolution, he had an uneven education because his Roman Catholicism, that they were strict and rigid in those periods, and they banned education or formal education for the believers, and debarred by his religion from attending university. So he had no formal education. He was educated in the house itself, in the home itself. Largely self-taught and precociously bright. He was very bright man, and his character mass of contradictions. There are a lot of contradictions in his characters. Deliberately misrepresented and concealed facts about his life. His life was deliberately misrepresented and concealed about facts about his life because of his enemies did this. And Robert Dodsley was his publisher. Robert Dodsley published all of his works. The health and character of Alexander Pope. In 1700, his family moved to Windsor Forest, where he contracted tuberculosis. He had a disease, lifelong disease, that is TB, tuberculosis, permanently damaging his health. And as he grew older, he grew weaker, had to wear a stiff and bodies to support his spine, and was physically dependent on others. He was not physically fit. He had to depend on others because of his tuberculosis. And he refers this disease as "this long disease, my life." and his health was ruined and his growth stunted by severe illness at the age of 12 itself, and it is known as sports disease. Sports disease is a kind of a tuberculosis that affects our spinal cord. He lived with his parents Winfield in Windsor Forest and was largely self-educated or self-taught, and suffered at the hands of his enemies. His enemies criticized him, his enemies satired him because of his physical health, and he was a small man, and he was loyal and generous to friends like Jonathan Swift. Jonathan Swift was a great friend of Alexander Pope. Jonathan Swift himself was a Roman Catholic, and he also supported Tory party, and he showed his precocious metrical skills in his pastorals written according to himself when he was at the age of 16, and he published in Tonson's Miscellany in 1709. He published a poem that is known as Pastorals. His physical deformity made him sensitive to insult, aggressive in replying to attacks, and he was insulted by others, and he also replied to others in an aggressive way, and he maintained personal animosity, a kind of animosity towards his enemies, and was incisive in his attacks. He attacked vehemently. His poems, some works are Pastorals in 1709, an essay on criticism 1711. There are famous lines in this poem. An essay on criticism is a didactic poem, and a little learning is dangerous thing. To err is human, to forgive is divine. These kinds of famous sayings are quoted by Alexander Pope. And after Shakespeare, Alexander Pope is the occasionally quoted writer in English. The Rape of the Lock came out in 1714, in 2 cantos in 1712, and Lytton's Miscellany revised as 5 cantos in 1714. So the year published here is 1714, and it established a reputation in the London society. Rape here means that theft of some hair. Okay, and it is a mock heroic poem, witty feminized in epic, and Windsor Forest in 1713, collected works in 1717, edition of Shakespeare in 1725. He edited the works of Shakespeare, essay in 1734. Essay on Man is a philosophical poem in heroic couplet. Heroic couplet was the couplet used in Neoclassical age, having two lines couplet. Part of a larger poem, projected but not completed.